Eddie and I slipped down to the edge of the Powder River, right up against some alfalfa fields and the river bottom, and started glassing. Boy, this cold weather is just kicking everything into overdrive.
Look at the frost on them deer's back.
Yeah, look at, there's bucks. How many are over here? 3 or 4?
Yeah, there's a couple over
there. Those two right there, look at they're peeling away from the group through the...
Tell you what I'm gonna have you do, Mark. You know that spot down there, you've been there before, there are 2 cottonwood trees and the Russian olives come out to
Everything
that point.
funnels, yeah.
Everything funnels to that point. I'm gonna send you down there.
Okay, I'm gonna sit there, I'll probably do some rattling, and then it's cold. I mean, if I get too cold, I'm just gonna come back up.
Yeah, I'll be right here.
All right.
Whatever happens, happens, and I'll be right here waiting for you.
All right, man.
Good luck.
Now that first morning was quite a shocker, mainly because of the weather. The temperature was at 0 to start with and dropping. You know how it always drops when the sun comes up? Well, it was really dropping that morning. It was going into the sub-zero category. A hoarfrost blanketed the landscape. Despite those frigid temperatures, the fun was beginning to start. Deer were moving everywhere. Bucks were just running nuts. There's a buck right there. And they were looking for love. Going up around. He's right there, he's right there. Full 50 yards. Cold morning. These deer aren't wanting to cross the Powder River because, as you can see, there's chunks of ice floating down it. So it's kind of keeping them corralled up here. I'm gonna just keep shopping here, keep looking, see what we see. But I have no doubt on this hunt we're gonna kill a nice buck. I took my time, slipping silently through the woods. But I still hadn't seen a big buck, so I decided might as well give the rattling a try. And right after I got into the rattling, hitting those horns together, here come a buck. It was one of those encounters where you just sit there and think, am I gonna have to pull the trigger in self-defense? He was just fired up like a turbocharged Corvette. That buck, he was chasing a doe out there. There was another little buck pestering him. When he heard those horns, he just dropped everything and charged. Man, that is just super action, and everything we're throwing at him is working today. I got to keep tossing some out there. Hopefully we're going to get a home run here. Now, Eddie, I'm not opposed to shooting a good mule deer.
Yeah, there's a chance we could run into a 170, 180 inch mule deer around here.
Well, I'm just keep that in mind. I mean, let's go after whitetails, but if we see the right mule deer, I'm all over it. That's the good thing about Montana's tag. It's good for an either or scenario. Either a big whitetail or a big mule deer. The next morning, the temperatures had creeped up a bit. They were still in the single digits, but it was not as cold as the morning before. I still had to use hand warmers. I still had to zip up the old polar fleece and the polyester, put the ear flaps down. But I felt like I could pull the trigger if I needed to in a heartbeat. Boy, they've been really coming through here. You can see these trails.
There's a lot of deer in this area.
Things really didn't get rolling that next day until after lunch. We were coming down this trail, just kind of easing along the edge of the woods, and Eddie saw a buck off in this little thicket. And it was a teeny teeny little thicket, just to some Russian olives, a few willows. It was a spot I really didn't think would hold deer. Despite what Eddie and I thought about how small the thicket was, we decided that we better take a look and maybe do a little rattling.
Go down a couple 100 yards, or you'll see where it comes to a point. Find you a tree, sit down next to it, and see what happens.
Okay, I'm gonna probably just stay there for about an hour at most.
Yeah.
Because I think they're gonna end up at this field, so I'll come back and meet you in about an hour.
Okay, sounds good. Good luck.
So I eased down slowly toward that thicket, taking my time, and I saw the buck. He was a beautiful big 5-point. I just caught a glimpse of him. He jumped out of the brush, was running a doe. They hadn't seen me, but he was just chasing her round. He didn't give me any chance for a shot, but he ran right back up in the woods. And another buck was following him, a smaller buck. I knew things were going to be good. They were chasing hard. There was more than one buck. There was a lot of activity. So all I needed to do was make a few more steps, get into position, and do some calling. Switching into stealth mode, I eased down to that river bottom. Now I felt like I did a pretty good job, and I found a perfect, and I mean a perfect little spot with a corridor right in front of me. The wind was great. The deer would have to swing out either into an opening or run right to me to keep the wind in their favor. I hadn't even put the antlers down, and a buck was on top of me just like that. He was an adolescent buck staring me down. Of course, he could see me. I was dressed like a pumpkin, but he didn't know what I was. Was I a buck? Was I a doe? Was I a hunter? And he stood there, saliva, snot dripping out of his mouth and nose. It was so cool because you could see how fired up he was. He was on a little bit of an overdose of testosterone, I think. It only took him about maybe 20-30 seconds to realize things were not how they are supposed to be, and he bolted out of there with a snort. Now that sometimes will get hunters on edge. A deer snorts and they think everything in the woods have heard it and is alerted. Nothing's going to happen. But I know time and time again when I've heard a deer snort and I throw back other calls, you can get deer in. So I immediately started doing more deer calls and tearing up the ground. I was trying to make it sound like there was a Muhammad Ali brawl going on and nobody should miss it. And another little buck took the bait. He come tearing in straight at me again, but he hit the brakes, skidded to a halt at about 20 yards, staring me down. That last buck, he stared me down just like the first one, looked me right in the eye. He didn't know what I was, but again, he knew enough, even as young as he was, he'd better skedaddle. And after sitting there for another 10 minutes or more, I just knew that big buck wasn't going to come in. He'd either slipped out or was too smart for old Mark, one or the other. I'm going to sneak back out, hook up with Eddie. He might have seen that buck disappear, but it's about time where we need to be getting to another spot to watch for the afternoon. We weren't wasting any time on this hunt. We were speed hunting from location to location using all the tactics. On one little stroll along a strip of the river, we spotted a beautiful big 4x4 buck. What's that? And he acted like he didn't have a care in the world about the rut. Oh, that's a good 4x4.
That is a good deer.
You know what's odd? Why is he leaning with that other buck?
Jeez, you'd think it ends November in the middle of the rut.
He'd be wanting to haul around and look for a girlfriend instead of hang out with a buddy.
He's pretty content right there with his friend.
He's about asleep. Or if we had that side, all I'd have to do is crawl out there and shoot him.
If we could hunt that side of the river, it'd be a slam dunk deal. That's the way it goes.
That's where not pressuring a deer sometimes works in your benefit because he'll stay on your side.
Yeah.
And hopefully the other neighbors will pressure him and he'll come over.
Push him back over to us.
Well, let's just leave him.
Yeah.
tomorrow morning, I think we want to be back in this area. Yeah. All right. The good news is that we were still in deer. No matter where we went, what bend of the river, we were finding lots of action.
Don't shoot, Mark. We can't hunt that side of the river. Dang it, we were that close.
We just had to find the right one in the right shooting position. The hours kind of disappearing on this hunt. I knew we had to have a little bit of luck working on our side, and that's just what happened.
Mark and I were working the river edge, and I seen a buck chase a doe into a bend on the river.
We weren't quite sure what it was, but he was rutting in some willows and Russian olives, and it was a perfect setup spot. So to make sure we were not wasting our time, Eddie and I split up again. He went up to watch the field, and I went down on the river edge and set up to watch that back end where those bucks just love to spit out and chase does out on the sandbars, chasing them out of the willows. Slowing down and sneaking into position, I crawled up into what looked like just the perfect perch for a shot. Instead of just charging in there, I decided hold back, watch that spot, and hopefully he'll come spitting out chasing that doe. Minutes ticked by and he didn't show, and we had to get on with the hunt. If I was going to get a buck yet, I needed to get hunting. So at that point, I just decided rattling was going to be my best option. It had worked in the past. We'd had super late season rattling. In fact, some of the best late season rattling in my career. I set my gun up on the shooting stick so I could shoot down into a low spot where I figured that buck might come because of the wind direction. And I also had an option to drop prone again and cover the long stretch of that sandbar of the Powder River. I hit those antlers together hard, really hard, making it sound like two mature bucks tearing it up over a hot doe, because that's what happens a lot of times during the late season. Clicking, clashing, jamming those horns. I threw them down, got on the gun, looked right down into that pocket thinking that buck's going to show up about 50 yards, 60 yards away. Bam! 150 yards away, there he was. Despite him seeing a goofy object, he was mesmerized and he stared up at me, giving me more than enough time to steady myself up and pull the trigger slowly. Yeah. That's the way you do it in Montana. Big gun, big bullet, dead deer. That's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 bucks rattled in. This deer held up a little bit further out than I thought he would, but it didn't matter. He came to the horns and ended my hunt better than I ever thought any hunt could end. That's a good sign. I can see antlers above the grass.
There he is.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that deer right there.
Okay, tell me who that is.
That's that deer we seen across the river yesterday, bedded with that little buck, isn't it?
That's exactly who that is. Shoot those big guns with big bullets, and here's what you get. Clean, one-shot kills. With the single shot, you gotta have one-shot kill anyway.
Right.
Oh, that is a good deer, man. I'll be ready to get him out of here.
Yeah.
Put it there again, man. It's always a good time hunting with you. What a way to end a hunt. We had hot action with calling. I got to hunt with some of my best friends in some of the greatest country that I enjoy revisiting every year. And from there on out, the cold weather wasn't a factor.